Hello, welcome back to J.P.'s World of Wrestling. I am a man, J.P. And on today's video, we are going to be discussing something we haven't really done in a while. We're going to be discussing Ljn Vs Hasbro's. Now, I've made it known on this channel before. When LJNs were out, I didn't really have any, and that's because, I barely even knew what wrestling was, and I didn't really know what they were called. And even if I did, if I would have asked for them for my birthday or for Christmas, my dad and my mom, they wouldn't have known what in the world to get. But Hasbro's, I gotta admit, they're a little bit closer, a little bit more near and dear to my heart, because I played with Hasbro's. I had quite a collection of Hasbro's when I was a kid, and when I say Hasbro's, I'm including WCW Galoob figures. Some guys, didn't really like to combine the Galoobs with the Hasbro's, but, I played with them together, although I have to admit, a lot of times, the Galoob wrestlers would wrestle other Galoob wrestlers, and the WWF wrestlers would wrestle other WWF wrestlers. But the pros and cons of each of these, like, you look at the LJNs, and, it's one solid piece of rubber. There's really no way to break it. Plus, this I think is like the perfect pose for a wrestling figure right here. So there's really no way to break it. You could throw it against the wall, whatever. The only way to really ruin it is if you let your dog get a hold of it and he chews it up, or she, or whatever. Yeah. But then there's the Hasbro's, made of hard plastic. But a lot of times, especially with these figures, a lot of times when I would play with them, the fingers would kind of get broke off. The paint would kind of fade away, which that happened with the LGNs as well. But the Hasbro ring, everybody remember those blue plastic rings? You slam one of these guys on there, and it made a really satisfying noise when you'd slam them down. But then the Hasbro's, or the LJNs, they had the LJN ring, the Sling 'em Fling 'em ring. Kind of the same thing. You throw these guys down there, and they would make kind of a sound. Everybody kind of remembers that sound. So, and by the way, you'll notice that the LJNs I got from Target are no longer on my wall. That's because I don't have them anymore. I saw a video of somebody that opened up these new Hasbro, or these new LJNs, and quite frankly, the quality is not what it once was. It's not like the original LJN figures, and it's the same thing with everything. They try to bring back something retro, but they don't do it correctly, and it's really not as good a quality as the original. So it's really just not even, they didn't even really bring it back. And the same with these LJNs. The new LJNs, they're supposed to be one solid piece of rubber, but I've seen videos of these new LJNs where people are pulling them apart and have them be they're two pieces. Plus some of the poses that they're coming out with for these figures, I don't understand it. Especially if you're supposed to be bringing back something that's retro, that would have been something, that kids would have played with back in the 80s. I wouldn't have played with a figure where his arms are up like that, like the Stone Cold LJN figure. I wouldn't do it. To me, the Stone Cold LJN figure sucks. Totally. Big time. Big time. But yet, they're selling a lot of them. But, I guess if all you're doing is collecting them, it was the same with the original Ravishing Rick Rude LJN. That pose sucked. That's why you always see Ravishing Rick Rude LJNs in peak tip-top condition, because there's no way to play with them. So, but anyway, but the Hasbro's, I loved the Hasbros. I played with the Hasbros. I had a lot of Hasbro figures when I was a kid. And so these are more dear to my heart. But I also love hearing stories about kids my age when they would open these up on Christmas Day and they would get them, and it was just so satisfying. It's actually fun to hear those stories. But yeah, I prefer the Hasbros, although sometimes Hasbros, the poses weren't very good. Like, they'd have, well, behind me you can see those rocker figures. Those were both, you know, fused together leg or jumpers. And, you know, those figures, I didn't like those as much. Although if the upper body was workable, then I didn't mind a jumper that much. But, and this particular Hogan was the first Hasbro figure that, one of the first Hasbro figures that I owned. This was definitely, not this exact one, but this style figure. I had the Hulk Hogan Series 1, and I played the heck out of that thing. Like I said, I played it with it until all the fingers broke off, and eventually he had very few fingers left, and I took acetone and I took off the Hulk Rules thing, and I took white out and I whited out the black of his eyes, and I made him like the psychopathic guy called Killer. I don't know. It was my imagination, you know. Anyway, so, you know, the closest thing, you know, that they brought back that was even somewhat close to the original were these. The Mattel retro style figures. And these are pretty good, although a lot of times the poses aren't very good. Like, this Iron Sheik is pretty good, but this 6 figures, horrible. And they keep making these jumper figures, even though they're terrible. And I saw the Road Dog one that came in the DX pack is awful, just horrible pose. His hands are like this down here, and it's like, oh, because he's supposed to be doing like the DX crotch shot. But at some point you gotta have him have a wrestling match. And I don't think these figure manufacturers even understand, or maybe they do, they just don't care. They're just trying to come up with something cool looking to sell it. But in all practicality, some of these are just not very good. Now, this one's pretty good, you know, and some of the figures they come up with are pretty good, but it just feels like they keep sort of recycling like the same body styles, and they won't come up with really anything new. So, I don't know, I'm kind of sort of focusing my attention now just on original Hasbro figures. Not even like the Hasbro style independent figures that they're making now, but more just original Hasbro figures. And maybe the Jakks figures, the bone crunching action figures, because those ones are still relatively cheap because they overproduce them. So, anyway, there are pros and cons to both of these figure lines. Like I said, this is the only LJN I own anymore, but I liked this figure, and don't get me wrong, I enjoy the LJN figures. Later on in life, when I'd get together with my best friend and we would play with these LJN figures, these were fun, just so much fun. But these are the ones I had when I was a kid, so these are near and dear to my heart. So, you know, what do you think? That's going to do it for this video. But actually, before I end the video, I want to know what you guys think. Did you prefer the Hasbros or did you prefer the LJNs? Pros and cons, whatever. Which ones did you prefer? Leave them in the comments below. And that is going to do it for today's video. If you're new, feel free to like and subscribe. And I will see you next time.